afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Melina Harris, and I'm the Human Rights Coordinator at SASOD Guyana. To our esteemed media colleagues, to our civil society partners, and to our specially invited guests, welcome. Good afternoon again, and I hope you're looking forward to the presentation that we have to give you today. So many of you may be aware that in 2013 there was a CADRES poll that was conducted measuring the perceptions and attitudes towards LGBT people in Guyana. Obviously quite some time has passed since 2013, and we have recently, SASOD, through RMK Consulting, has recently commissioned a poll to get some updated results and to see what the attitudes and perceptions towards LGBT people are currently in Guyana. As you can imagine, some time has passed, and to enable us to do our work and to really serve the communities, we need to know exactly what's going on. So we have received some very encouraging results, and we're really excited to share that with you all here present in this room, those watching online, and of course the wider Guyanese public too. So we'll have some introductory remarks from Dr. Mark Curtin, who's the principal and director of RMK Consulting Enterprise. Then we'll have a presentation of the poll itself, which you can see behind me, and that will be done by Dr. Marlon Anatol, who is the research consultant at RMK Consulting. Then we'll take some questions from the media, so I hope you're prepared. And we'll have some closing remarks from Mr. Joel Simpson. So to begin, we'll take the introductory remarks from Dr. Mark Curtin. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for that introduction. I am Mark Curtin, and I represent RMK Consulting Enterprises. We have had significant experience, along with my colleagues from RMK Consulting, both in Guyana and the rest of the region. We have been engaged in several areas, and so the experience, both individually and collectively, have prepared us for this type of survey and analysis. A few months ago, we were commissioned, or the study was commissioned, by SASOD in partnership with their colleague organization, Human Dignity Trust, to conduct this exercise. The study of perceptions and attitudes towards LGBT persons in Guyana. In this period, during which we prepared and pre-tested a questionnaire, after which, between June 18th and July 12th, we had the field survey done, and there were 1,070 respondents to the questionnaire. It was an in-person survey, which meant that we went to houses and households, and the respondents were asked to follow the field researchers' questions on the questionnaire. For us, it was an important experience in that we, in spite of rain and some of the attendant challenges for bad weather, we were able to conduct this questionnaire exercise and to have 1,070, a very important kind of number in the context of Guyana and the national survey, fulfilling the expectations of both our clients and our RMK Consulting Enterprise. Now we've come to today to present the findings of that important survey, and I have with me my colleague, Dr. Marlon Anatol, who's the expert in the kind of analytical issues that we deal with as an enterprise. And so he's going to lead us through this segment of the event, after which there will be questions which we hope we can provide all of the relevant answers to your queries, etc. Now, Marlon Anatol, my colleague, is Trinidadian, has worked with us both in Guyana, as I mentioned, and the region, stretching from Suriname to Belize, and has been a colleague in the University of the West Indies, where I worked for more than 14 years. And he brings with him the kind of expertise which this project demanded. And so I want to ask Dr. Anatol to lead us through this segment before we take any questions from you. So, Dr. Anatol.
Hi, good afternoon all. As Dr. Gooden said, I'm Marlon Anatol, and my part of it is to walk you through what we found in the research exercise, after which we'll take questions and see if we can give any clarifications if so needed. Okay, so let's start. So we're looking at the study, and again, one study was done by CADRES out of Barbados, and that was in 2013. So what we did is we did another study where we can compare the results of that with what we're seeing now. Again, through the period of time, as we will see here, some things would have changed positively, happily. And again, at the end of this, you will be provided with a copy of the report for your perusal. Okay, so as we look at it, as Doc said, it's a national survey, just over 1,000 people, which is a good spread, and it helped us with margins of error, and there's a little bit of oversampling, which is necessary for a piece of research such as this. We said it was face-to-face, males and females. We had also different demographics we looked at. We had gender, we had age, we had religion, education, we also had income. And as we go through some of the more significant things, we will highlight as we go along to make it clearer. What we try to do is, and I think we fairly achieved it, is to ensure that we had at least close to a third with the different age categories, as you will see here, as well as the male-female dynamic was split in half, basically. So it will give us a good position for comparison. Okay, let's start. First thing, most Guyanese personally know someone who is gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, and therefore what we see here, people answering, 56% did know somebody, and of course broken down by categories. Acquaintances was 17, friends are roughly 1/5, which is about 20%, relative 10%, and immediate family was smaller, which is about 7.6%. As we go further, you'll see why this is significant in the research findings. And of course, no was about 40%, said it did not. Then we looked at the attitudes towards it. So we looked at the percentage of respondents that tolerate and accept gay, lesbian, and transgender people. And we see here, you have tolerating being roughly a little under 40%, accepting about 34%. Those who decided that they didn't know weren't sure was about 15%, and the area or the descriptor of hate was about 12%. Again, that's important, as you see as we'll go along a little further. Then this one here will show the difference between what CADRES found in 2013 and what we found in 2022, which is, I think, highly significant, where you'll see the acceptance rate actually increased by 15.5%. That's in no way significant. The net change was 28.5%. And also important is the descriptor of hate actually went down by 13%. Again, this could not have been predicted, but this is what we found. And of course, you can see by the different colors, CADRES being the darker color, you can see what they found in 2013 as opposed to what we found in 2022. Okay, so then we wanted to figure out those who knew people from the community, what was the attitude towards them. So the question was, do you personally know someone who is gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender? And then when we look at it, as you can see by the colors here, whether it's family, relative, friend, or acquaintance, we looked at. So we found that, for example, in the immediate family, 61% found acceptance, 30% tolerance. This again is interesting because in a lot of literature that we've perused, you found that one of the biggest obstacles, particularly in a time after COVID where people were isolated, there are higher levels of anxiety, stress, depression, etc., that it was said, or it was found, that one of the things that contributed was lack of support by family members. So this again was significant. Then we asked, or we found that nearly a majority of Guyanese believe that the government should prioritize legally protecting the rights of LGBT people. And when you look at the diagram, where you see roughly 50% said yes, it's a priority, and 34% says no, it's not a priority, there's actually a disparity of about 15.3%, which is showing that the majority of people in this situation are saying, yes, we need to look at legally protecting members of the society. Then, as I said to you before, it's also important when we looked at the different age groups across the national survey. And again, I found it particularly interesting because normally with surveys like this, you will find disparities, significant disparities between the different age levels. We did not find that here in Ghana in this survey. Where we look at the respondents' perception of whether government should legally protect LGBT people, by age group. And what you find here with the young people was roughly 50%, the middle-aged people roughly 50%, and the 51 and over, or 51 to 70, just under 50%. Again, that's significant. For anybody who's done any research in this area, you would think or presume or be able to predict maybe that older people may be less tolerant than younger people, but this was not what was found here. Again, highly significant. Similarly, this was very interesting when we looked at, because one of the demographic areas that we used, of course, was religion. So we wanted to know who was Muslim, Hindu, Christian, non-evangelical, evangelical, etc., etc., etc. So as we go around, we looked at, one of the questions was, how often do you go to church? Of course, because in Caribbean societies, a lot of us say that we are believers, we go to church, but we really want to figure out how often do you go to church? And of course, you have once or once or more, which is about 50%, at least once a month, which is not very often, which is about 47%, almost 50%, and then on special occasions or never, not at all, basically, again, 50% of the population. So in other words, what we're saying here is that regardless of how often they're going to church, basically, they believe in the protection of the rights. Again, that's significant. And again, it will become more significant as we go along. So now we ask people who know an LGBT person if they were more likely to support protections. And therefore, when you look at it, should the government protect gay, lesbians, and transgenders? We find in the immediate family, if you had a member that you knew, 70% of the bat said yes. And of course, a friend, 67%. And if you remember this slide before, when we talked about how many people knew family, knew friend, knew acquaintance, you're seeing the numbers here saying, regardless of what percentage of them knew people who were from the community, they're saying that, listen, there must be some level of protection given to members of the community. Then we found that the majority of Guyanese are likely to support the elimination of the law discriminating sex between men. Totally likely to support was about 53.9%. As you can see here by the diagram, not when you look at somewhat likely, 15%, likely 10%, and very likely a little under 30%. Again, it's been significant, that is over half. The majority of Guyanese of all ages support the elimination of law discriminating sex between men. Again, I said the age thing was significant, and we see it here again, where it's roughly 53 to 54% across the ages. There was no significant difference in any way. Then we went on saying that both male and female support the elimination of the law. So as we look at it in relation to age just now, when we look at it in gender, we find roughly 51%, 57%. Of course, anybody doing any reading on it will know or will realize, or even in conversations or anecdotally, that females tend to be a little more accepting. Yes? So again, this has been consistent with what was found. Then, moving on, we see a majority, or a significant majority, of Guyanese support the protection of LGBT from discrimination at the workplace. Again, this was significant because even if it is that they knew people, personally, family members, immediate or relatives or acquaintances, what you found is the majority of people, roughly 80%, well, roughly 70%, a little over 70% indicated that regardless of what they had responded to before, that they believe that there should be no discrimination in the workplace and therefore protection needs to be given. As the graph will show, the diagram will show, it's 15% by 14% by 42%. Again, highly significant. We then found that a clear majority of Guyanese agreed that there will be little or no impact on their lives if the law was overturned or repealed. Okay, again, this is significant. So what you found is when you looked at the people who viewed it positively, that's just over 3/4 of the individuals, where just over half said it won't affect them much, and then somewhat positively would be 7%, and very positively would be just over 1/10. So again, that was significant to find and to report on. And therefore, that in a nutshell shows the major findings from the survey. And of course, we showed some things in relation to what happened before the 2013. So all in all, what was found was the level of acceptance and tolerance has increased relatively significantly over the last 10 years or so. And at that point in time, Mr. Simpson, I will give the mic over to you. Oh, sorry, I give the mic over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anisal, for that presentation. I'm sure everyone has many questions. Our media colleagues, our civil society partners, would anyone like to open the floor with a few questions for the respective doctors? Yeah? Would you like to come up?
Good afternoon. Nick Bagger from the Star News. I have a few questions. First, do you think that this survey size is good enough to give an accurate picture of what the situation is with LGBT persons, given that Guyana has a population of 750,000, this is just about 70 respondents. Secondly, did the survey take into consideration the sexual orientation of the respondents, given the answers we were looking for? And how did you go about selecting the respondents, and from which communities are they from? I saw you said they were from across regions, but particular the communities. If you have, let me ask some more questions.
Okay.
Would you like to come up or take questions?
I'll do the first two.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, we did. Like this one?
Slide it in.
That nice trouble. All right.
Okay.
You take that. I'll take the first two. What do you want to take?
Well, let me say that 1,070 is a significant representation in the context of the population of Guyana. We've seen where across the region and even in Latin America, for example, just yesterday there was a sample of 2,000 Brazilians being polled for the next elections. And remember, the Brazilian population is 214 million. Now, so that there's a tendency when you go beyond that kind of number to get repetition, which doesn't add to any kind of finding. So we found that 1,070 is a pretty representative sample of the Guyanese community. And Marlon?
In addition to it, methodologically, that is correct. We actually oversampled. So for a population size of 750, 1,070 is actually oversampling. Okay. To answer your question about sexual orientation, whether it was considered, no, it was not one of the demographics, because that would skew the results of the survey. A survey like this, if it is that you want to do a purposive sampling or you want to do non-representative sampling, then that would be okay. But for national survey, looking at attitudes, such as what we're doing here, no, that's not one of the demographics that is required. It will be non-productive. His third question was something about community.
Well, communities. We did it, sorry, yeah. We sampled from the regions. We did household sample, a household structure. And we got the demographics and the age cohorts as you saw in the slides. So we did across the regions, and we did, I would say, the sample was, what term it again? Stratified random? Yeah, a stratified random sample of the communities. And
Can you give me the names of some of these communities that you sampled?
Well, yeah, I mean, in Region 4, we did Diamond.
Outside of Region 4 and Region 3, you're talking about the hinterland regions and all of these other regions. Guyana is vast and population is sparse.
So, however, we did 1,070, which we thought is representative of Guyana across the regions. So, I mean, I don't know if you need to get individual villages and counties, but basically.
I do have a follow-up on the same.
Sure, go ahead.
I just need a mic because of the electricity.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the follow-up question I have concerns sampling as well.
Yeah.
I heard you said across the regions, and I share the brother's concern. Is that all regions, all 10, for example? Because that wasn't clear. Maybe it was, but it wasn't clear.
All right, well, the regions were Region 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. And we thought that that was representative because we...
Sampling of the 10 regions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of the 10 regions, yes. A representative sample of Guyana. And we got the demographics, we got the ethnic spread, and we thought it was representative of the population of Guyana, nationally.
I don't know if you'd be able to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'd be able to answer this question, but what's next? What do you guys do with this report?
You have to ask the client, because we were commissioned to do a study. The study has been done. We have reported the findings, and the client is in the best position to answer that question.
You're kind of preempting my closing remarks, but I'll answer now nevertheless. It was very important for us to do this survey 9 years later. And what's significant about the findings is that LGBTQ acceptance in Guyana has soared in the last 9 years since we first did this in 2013. We have acceptance going up from 19% to about 30-something%. Can't remember all the figures off the top of my head. Significantly, hate decreasing from 25% to 12%. That's a 50% decrease. And overall, between those two categories, you're seeing a cumulative or a net change of 28.5%. I think that's highlighted on one of the easels there. And I think that's extremely significant that there's such a large number, more than half the population has positive attitudes towards LGBTQ people. We also found that 53-point-something% support decriminalization of sex between men. very, very significant as well. And that 72% support legal protections from non-discrimination in the workplace. Now, we've been in a place in Guyana where the politicians are telling us that the society isn't ready. We've heard that for many years at SASOD. The society isn't ready for certain legal changes. The society isn't ready for certain policy changes. And now what this data is showing us that society is more than ready. The society is ahead of the curve. And Guyana has changed significantly, at least over the last 9 years, in terms of the views. Important for us because it helps us to focus our public education efforts. We now know who are the particular demographics that we need to target based on the results that we're seeing and what in particular issues that we need to work on. So for instance, like the example I just highlighted, we have 72% supporting non-discrimination, legal protections for non-discrimination in workplace, but 53% supporting decriminalization. So it suggests that we need to do more public education work around decriminalization to bring that 53 up closer to par to that 72%. And we now have to ask ourselves why so many more people support non-discrimination protections in the workplace, but they don't equally, the same number of people don't equally support decriminalizing sex between men. And so those questions provide us with information for designing public education programs, public education efforts, and very importantly, it provides us with the evidence and data to be able to say to the policymakers that the society is far more ready than you think it is for legal and policy changes. The other very telling result for us is not only that attitudes have soared, positive attitudes have soared in the last 9 years, but 49-point-something%, half the population, thinks that government should protect LGBTQ people from discrimination as a matter of a priority. They don't just agree, they think it's a priority. Because you're always told that the bread and butter issues and other issues are the priority for people. People don't really care about LGBTQ issues. Half the population views it as a priority. So for us, we now have the evidence to take to the government and policymakers to say this is where the population is on these particular issues. I sure can. So the research, this research cost $31,000 and it was supported from our partners that we work with, the Human Dignity Trust, which is an international human rights organization that's based in London in the United Kingdom. And we work very closely with HDT. You might remember earlier this year that we did some research. We started some research with them as well on hate crimes, where we did a situation analysis on hate crimes related to race, ethnicity, sexuality, and gender in Guyana. We promised that we would have the full report out by the end of the year. So we're also still working with HDT on that, but HDT is really our partner on communications-based research, all the work that we do to design our communications campaigns so that they're evidence-informed. They're the ones that support that kind of research that we do at SASOD Guyana.
How would you select RMK?
Oh, I think the mic is needed for the live stream so people could hear your questions.
How did, or what process did you employ in selecting the consultant?
Oh, we had a call for proposals, and we had at least 5 local companies responding to the call for proposals. And we shortlisted and interviewed 3 of the 5, and RMK was selected for this particular study. There was another study that we did as well, and another company won that. It was originally proposed that it would have been a 2-fold study, but we ended up splitting the project, and we gave one company the quantitative component, and RMK won the bid for the qualitative component. Geoffrey.
Can you share with us the thinking behind the language sex between men or between 2 men versus, I don't know, women?
Oh, it's because of what the law says. So we have a provision, it's specifically because of what the law says. So we have a provision, it's either section 351 or 353 of the Criminal Law Offences Act, that the short title, gross indecency. And in essence, it criminalizes any form of intimacy between men, whether in public or private, whether it's consensual or not. So we've been advocating for the repeal of that particular law. So we wanted the public's opinion on that. John, any questions?
I think the hardest questions were asked. And I think quite fairly so, people would want to have some amount of confidence in the study and the survey. I think no one wants to have false hope. So hearing good news is one thing, but being sure about it, I think is important. Do I have any questions of my own? Not at the moment. But I'm very pleased with the news and the responses.
Thank you. I would also say that the results also mirror our observations generally, doing work over the years. And I recall us saying this on our 10th anniversary. We had a media event on our 10th anniversary. And the 10th anniversary press conference was at the Sidewalk Cafe on Mill Street, I remember. And for the 10th anniversary, we were also having a concert at the cafe. And we had performers who were volunteering to perform a SASOD's 10th anniversary concert of all sexual orientations. And at the time, that would have been in 2013 actually, at the time we were saying that when we first started, nobody would want to be publicly associated with SASOD. So the society is changing and the society is evolving, and no doubt because of the public education efforts that are being put in by civil society, by international organizations, UN agencies which are supporting this work. And we're seeing the benefits of that in terms of changing attitudes and perceptions. So we do feel that this matches the lived reality. In fact, this morning, another researcher, a graduate researcher in the UK reached out and said, I heard you're launching something, I'm not clear what it is you're launching, but I just wanted to confirm that you're finding what my own research finds, and which is that Guyana is moving more left. And I said, what do you mean? Because I wanted to be clear. And he said, becoming more liberal. I said, yeah, that's exactly what we're finding. Yes. The feedback is the speakers. I don't know if we can do anything about that. Once the mic is close to the speakers, yeah.
Hello, my name is Peter Thomas. I'm an advocate for indigenous peoples all across Guyana. So, unfortunately, I was late today, but I'm just here to make one comment. From your evaluations, maybe the next time we're doing something like this, SASOD then I should say, doing something like this, I would love to see more of the hinterland regions being part of it. Because there, from experience, there are a lot of young people in the indigenous communities that are, still being discriminated, taken advantage of. And I'm probably the only one that is willing enough to stand up and say, I will help, I will fight for you in this aspect, right? So maybe next time SASOD is doing evaluation or so, I would love to see you guys, visit more the hinterland regions and let our people in there, I should say, let them feel that they're not being left out, and it's okay to be who you are and choose what kind of life you want to live, and so just for them to know that we care and there's someone that is there to represent them at some point.
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit about the regions and the reason for selecting and working in particular regions. So we had to have a sample that mirrored the demographics of the country, right? So we particularly used the 2012 census and other kind of data that we had. If we were to go to the hinterland regions, 1, 7, 8, and 9, the numbers that we could sample in those regions were so small because when we look at the percentage of the population that resides in those regions and you apply that percentage to 1,000 respondents, in some of the regions we were going for double digits. You're going all the way to region 9 to maybe interview 17 people, right? So we decided that it isn't worth the cost for just a slightly bit more information that you might receive. So what we did is in the regions that we did sample, we ensured we went to indigenous communities and ensured that we had indigenous representation in those regions. You will receive a copy of the full report, and in the demographics section, you'll get the breakdown of race and ethnicity and so on, and you will see that it closely mirrors the demographic of the Guyanese population. We took that decision because we couldn't go to those regions and just sample as many people as it would be worth traveling there to, right? Because it would skew the survey. So we were able to do that, and we're pretty confident that the scientific methodology and the rigor that we apply to that is sound. So there's no issues there. It's a national representative sample. And in a big country like Guyana, where half the population is in region 4, and then another maybe 3/4 is on the coast, you don't have to go to every single region to get a national representative sample. You could go to 6 of the 10 regions and sample in such a way so that you have the different demographics of race, gender, ethnicity, and so on, and still arrive at a national representative sample, right? So it was just a kind of a cost-benefit analysis that we had to do, because I looked at the numbers myself and I said, you know, it really isn't worth going into region 8 for single digits, right?
I'm not quite sure what the, on this, I don't think this presentation would have answered this question, but I'm not sure what the present position is among the religious leaders of Guyana. But I would like to advise, if I may, that of course you already know that when you present this information you may get some lashback from religious leaders. But my thinking is, if perhaps a similar survey can be done specifically among religious persons, I know you already have some information here, but if the focus can be on religious persons, people who are actually religious, whether it's Muslim, Christian, whatever it is, not leaders necessarily, just the members of the religion, have a survey among them, get a feel as to what they're thinking. And then, when you're ready to, I suspect that you're going to have positive feedback from them, similar to this feedback. So if there's any lashback from religious leaders, there could be a retort where you say, so you feel this way, here is what the members of your religion feel. So I think, but again, it's based on the assumption that maybe religious leaders are still against any positive changes.
Thanks for that, John. You want to respond to that? Yeah, please. Because I was now pulling the report to quote.
No, that is not necessary. They have the report. Okay, that's an interesting comment, but I will then ask you a question. In doing something like that, which is quite possible actually, how does one measure religiosity? So for example, is it, as we've tried to show, is it that you go to church once a week, twice a week, once a month, never occasionally? So that's the first issue that you have. People will claim to have a religion, that's the religion they are born in or baptized in, which is what we pick up in our demographics. So if you could just help me a little bit to tell me, how would you want to test their religious commitment?
You can't do what you did this time, which is go house to house. You have to have a systemic way of targeting people who are actually actively religious, attending ceremonies, attending weekly services, or if you want to stretch it to the point where they go at least once a month. But you'd have to target membership.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I now understand your question. What did you ask it? Okay. Sure.
So you understand the question, leave it to me to answer.
I already answered it.
All right, so I pulled up this particular graph, John, because I think this was a significant part of it. So for us, we thought about that. We didn't just ask people what is their religion. We also asked them how frequently you go to religious service or religious service, whether it's the mosque, temple, and so on, as an indicator of religiosity, right? Because how else would we know, right? We can't measure spirituality, but at least we could get an indicator of religiosity. And what we found here is this shows exactly, in terms of those who support protecting the rights of LGBT people, the frequency with which they go to religious service against that, against how they respond to that. And you would see it's not very significant in my view. The people who go to religious service once a week, 50.1%. At least once a month, 47%. Special occasions or never, 51.3%. So I think that's an indicator right there that people's, at least the frequency of attending religious services, which we're using as an indicator of religiosity, does not affect their views on protecting the rights of LGBTQ persons. Now, what was also very interesting as well, and you'll see more details when you get the full copy. Everybody's getting a hard copy. This is just a summary, right? That across the board, religion does not seem to affect people's views on the rights and protection of the rights of LGBTQ people. We couldn't find religion or a particular religion being a key determinant of attitudes and perceptions. So something else is happening. There are other things, there are other factors, and religion is not the boogeyman, so to speak. Okay? Any other questions for RMK Consulting Enterprise or us at SASOD Guyana at this stage? None? It doesn't seem so. Well, I feel like if I've already given my closing remarks, but I'll attempt some anyway. First, I want to thank everybody who made this project possible. We've been working on this for a long time. It often culminates in, a 20-page report and an event that lasts an hour. But it's been many, many months of work that has been gone into this. Let me start with thanking our partners, Human Dignity Trust, who have been very, very supportive of the communications research that we've been undertaking at SASOD. Not only this project, but also the hate crimes project that I mentioned. And we're still working to publish that study by the end of the year. Especially thankful to RMK Consulting Enterprise, who have been working on this for months with us. They responded in detail to our call for proposals, our rigorous interview process. We had a little break for a while where we had to put things on pause, and then we had to pick it up back again. And they were very, very, very patient and supportive with us, even down to today's launch. We were still back and forth with them to get a copy that's properly ready for print that you could take away today. And we've really enjoyed working with the team at RMK Consulting, Dr. Mark Curtin, Dr. Marlon Anatol, and Dr. Clement Henry, who is not with us today. We wanted to also thank our technical team at Freedom to Marry Global, which is another human rights organization that we work with, and they're based out of the US. And they're probably watching the live stream, but they've also brought a lot of technical insight from doing similar work all over the world that really, I think, helped to strengthen our approach to this research project and ensured we got a product out of it that is useful and that I think that we'll be using for another decade at least to really program and plan our work at SASOD. What happens next? Very important question that was asked. I think this data, this information needs to be on the desk of every parliamentarian, all 65 members of parliament, and we are going to continue our advocacy to bring this to the attention of the policymakers because we really want to see action, particularly now that we're seeing that the population, 72% is saying they are supportive of non-discrimination protections related to the workplace. SASOD has been advocating for the amendment of the Prevention of Discrimination Act 1997 to have sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression included. And we've been saying that that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the amendment. That's the legal change that everybody supports. And now we have a statistic to prove it. 72% of the population supports that. So we think that's the place to start, and that's the priority issue for us. And we're continuing to engage with the government and engage with the parliament on these issues. We're happy to be hearing the nice rhetoric, the lovely rhetoric from the PPP government, especially at the international fora. I've said repeatedly that President Ali has spoken at a UN special session on HIV and AIDS and spoke about amending the Prevention of Discrimination Act to bar discrimination against LGBTQ persons and other groups which are vulnerable to HIV, but we haven't seen any action. But we always hear the best rhetoric on the international stage. And for us now, it's really time for action. We're into just over 2 years in to the administration, and it's soon the mid-year point, the midpoint of the term in office. And for us, we're going to measure performance by actual delivery of results. The government has not tabled any new legislation to advance the rights of LGBTQ persons. And that's what we want to see, starting with this amendment to the Prevention of Discrimination Act, 1997. And we're saying to the government that 72% of the population is behind you. Not that you need popular support, but you have it anyway. So for us, that's where we're going with this advocacy. Also, of course, this research is a resource for civil society, for international organizations, for development partners who want to do public education programs in Guyana on LGBTQ issues especially. We hopefully, when we do this study again in about 10 years, that 12% hate is down to 0, right? And acceptance is up even more, acceptance is doubled even more. So those are the kinds of interventions that we think that these results will allow us to design and measure, and so that we're doing things based on evidence, not just based on women fancy and that I think this and I think that, and I think the religious people homophobic, but maybe they're not. Homophobia is there, but it's not because of religion, right? We now have the evidence so that we're responding in ways which are informed by evidence. So that's where we're going with this at SASOD. Right? I want to thank you all for coming, and please ensure that you get a copy of the report, and we're going to take a short coffee break before we go into the second half of today's activity. So please ensure you have a copy of the report, and please help yourself to refreshments at the back of the room, tea, coffee, juice, and some snacks. Thank you all.